Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into Thomas Alethea's 12 Steps to a Good Life. We're going to use his framework to untangle two of the most destructive, but let's face it, deeply human emotions we all deal with. Mastering these, it's honestly a total game changer for a better life.
Okay, quick question for you. Do you actually know the strict psychological difference between jealousy and envy? Or are you, kind of mixing them up like most people do? It's so common to just swap jealous and envious in everyday chats. But, as we're going to see in this explainer today, if you confuse these two in the realm of psychology, it can totally block you from understanding your own behavior.
All right, let's get into Section 1, the perennial struggle.
So Alethea defines this perennial struggle as the inescapable tension between who we are right now and who we desperately long to become. And here's the thing. This isn't some bug or flaw you need to cure. It's just part of the human package. It houses what he calls our shadow self, which is basically where we hide all those ancient survival mechanisms and messy emotional responses we'd much rather the world didn't see.
This brings us to a really famous psychological truth from Carl Jung. What you resist persists. The text makes a great point here. When we try to shove down dark feelings like jealousy and envy, they don't just magically vanish. No way. They actually grow stronger in the dark, totally warping our worldview, and, eventually, completely wrecking our inner peace.
Moving right along to Section 2, Jealousy versus Envy.
Okay, so this is absolutely crucial. The book draws a really strict psychological distinction between these two often confused emotions. Listen to this. Jealousy is all about protecting something or someone that you perceive as already yours. It's driven entirely by the fear of losing what you currently have. But envy centers exclusively on wanting something that someone else possesses. It is pure, unadulterated longing for something you don't have. Basically, it boils down to guarding versus grasping. To really wrap our heads around the bitter cost of jealousy, Alethea compares it to a hypervigilant guard dog. Because it's fueled by this deep-seated suspicion and insecurity, it frequently leads to suffocating, controlling behaviors toward the exact people you're terrified of losing. C.C. Colton hit the nail on the head when he said, "Of all the passions, jealousy is that which exacts the hardest service and pays the bitterest wages."
Now, envy, on the other hand, makes you look outward with pure bitterness. Teddy Roosevelt actually called it a confession of inferiority. When you're envious, there's this profound sense of inadequacy sitting right beneath the surface, and it can literally prompt you to resent or even actively sabotage the people who have the success, the traits, or the possessions that you deeply desire.
Section 3, the shared poison. Let's look at their toxic footprint. So, whether you're guarding what's yours or grasping for what isn't, both of these emotions share three highly toxic traits. First, they breed massive resentment and insecurity. Second, they foster mistrust and spark conflict, which, as you can imagine, heavily strains your relationships. And third, they both emerge from a place of diminishing comparisons. The big takeaway here? Both of these emotions act as literal poison to your mental health and spirituality. It's actually fascinating how ancient wisdom lines up so perfectly with modern psychology here. The Book of Proverbs states, "The life of the body is a heart at peace, but envy rots the bones." Alethea uses this to point out that these unchecked emotions literally spike our cortisol and rot away our emotional foundation from the inside out.
All right, Section 4, Responding to Jealousy. Let's talk actionable strategies.
When jealousy hits, your ancient survival brain screams at you to tighten your grip, right? But to actually survive it, you have to do the exact opposite. First up, you've got to communicate your fears openly. Second, build trust through consistent, honest actions. Third, shift your focus to authentic connection, not control. And finally, work on your own self-esteem. You literally cannot force a relationship to survive through control. It only survives through connection.
And I love this mindset shift. Treat your feelings like guests. Pour them a cup of tea. They absolutely deserve to be heard, but they do not get to move in and dictate your life. Try not to shame yourself for feeling jealous. Suppressing that shadow self, as we talked about, only makes it stronger. So practice some self-compassion to ease that underlying insecurity.
Which brings us to Section 5, Responding to Envy.
Now, the protocol for envy requires a total 180, from outward longing to inward growth. First, genuinely practice gratitude for what you already have. Second, get to work developing your own personal strengths. Third, celebrate other people's successes. And fourth, this is a big one, limit those toxic online comparisons. You're basically taking the energy of that envy, which is usually just a signal of an unmet need anyway, and using it as motivation to develop yourself.
Let's be real, step 3 is definitely the hardest. Can you genuinely smile when someone else wins? But the ultimate antidote to envy is learning to view another person's success not as a threat to your own worth, but as an actual opportunity for empathy and celebration. When you can do that, you completely neutralize the bitterness of envy.
Section 6. Finding Inner Peace. How to bring this all together.
Alethea really hammers home the concept of emotional regulation here. Look, the goal is never to become some emotionless robot. Stuffing your feelings is basically just building a ticking time bomb. Instead, the goal is to regulate your shadow self by acknowledging the feeling and understanding what it's telling you without letting it drive the bus. You feel the jealousy, you feel the envy, but then you choose a rational, healthy response instead of a destructive reaction.
All right, so you've got the exact definitions, you understand your shadow self, and you have the practical tools to regulate these emotions. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. As you go back to your day-to-day, I want to leave you with one final thought. Are you going to let fear and comparison keep you hiding in the shadows? Are you finally ready to step out into a life of gratitude?